Okay, well, it's 8 o'clock now, Eastern Standard Time. Hello, everybody. This is Carmen Johnson, your host of the Healthy Kids Revolution. So excited to have everybody on the call tonight, and what a treat. This is going to be, hopefully, one of the most memorable conversations that you get in this whole summit, because what I'm going to teach you all tonight is actually the basis, the groundwork for everything that we'll build upon in this series. And hopefully you all heard Dr. Katz earlier today. Fabulous conversation with him, and just love how he came from us from a perspective of internal hope and love versus academia and science. He came to us as the way to raise our family is through love. So now what I'm going to do, it's kind of funny, is I'm the love person and I'm going to teach the science, and you know, Dr. Katz is the science person and he's teaching about love. So that means we all have lots of capabilities. So what's going to happen tonight is, if you all would allow me to, I would love to explain to you the science of your cells. And basically, I tried to teach adults for a while. I went back to school to study nutrition, became a board-certified health coach. We all have a way that we got to where we are. And I used to sell pharmaceuticals, and I used to teach doctors for a living. And then, there came a time in my life I went through a divorce, moved out of my house with my ex-husband, took my two kids with me, or our two kids, and, was going through some life changes, as we all do, and decided that I was sitting in a hair chair one day getting extensions put in. Of course, you guys see I have this short blonde hair, and I know how people love to ramble on about themselves. I'm not doing that. This is to tell you exactly what happened. Was I was sitting in a hair chair, and this girl comes in with a flyer saying that she was bringing in a presenter into town, and he had cured his nephew of autism. And one of my best friend's child had autism. And so I decided I would go to that summit. And I went to hear this doctor speak, Dr. Dan Pompa, and he taught the science of the cells. He was teaching doctors this. And I wanted to go because I wanted to learn what was going on. I had a friend who, this friend's child had autism. One of my best friends, who's an OBGYN, had a double mastectomy, had come down with cancer, no previous history. My very own personal issue was my niece was 11, and she developed diabetes after she lost her oldest sibling in a tragic accident. He drowned in Mexico, and they were the youngest and oldest siblings, very, very close. And she had a series of different things that were traumatic and sort of built up inside of her, and she spilled over into disease. So I think I'm probably talking about things you all know. Everybody that we know, if we counted on our hands and fingers, we would know at least 10 people that were either overweight, having trouble losing weight, had low energy, children that were suffering from ADHD, autism, you name it, the gamut. Overweight children, obesity, I think they said 1 in 3 children right now is obese. And so basically what we're talking about is this whole world is in danger of great demise if we do not change the way we're eating. But everybody knows we should eat differently. And here's the fun thing. What I hope I share with you tonight is to explain how bad foods affect us at the cellular level. And if you all don't mind, I'm going to actually talk to you sometimes like I talk to the children. But to tell you what my mission is, I have a company that's called Minding What Matters, and the mission is to promote healthier and longer lives by educating the community, especially our children, on the science of how our bodies work and providing simple solutions to help heal ourselves from within. And we get to do that one teaching moment at a time. So here's the big aha. I think this is from 2004, the cover of Time magazine, The Secret Killer. And if you can read the fine print, it says the surprising link between inflammation and heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. What can you do to fight it? So you guys are probably going, well, what's the big deal there? What is Carmen talking about? Cellular inflammation. If any of you are in the healthcare industry, you've probably heard about cellular inflammation. And the way I explain this to the children is it's like you have a bucket, like the big slide at the theme parks. If anybody's been to like a Carowinds or a water park when you go on vacation, you know how they have those big slides that fill up the big water buckets. And eventually, once that bucket gets to a certain point, it spills over. Well, that's what happens in your body. We have cellular inflammation, and I'm going to explain exactly how. And hopefully, if you all are sitting at a desk, you have a piece of paper and a pencil that you're writing and drawing, because we're going to do some drawing in this session because, number one, visually, it will help you understand what I'm talking about. And then number two, it actually helps with retention. So you'll be able to remember better what you learned tonight. So the big aha is cellular inflammation, if you look at this wheel chart, everything on this chart basically stems from our cells being inflamed or our cells being sick, okay? So if you look up at the top, inability to lose weight is up at like 12 o'clock. And then over at 2 o'clock, you've got low energy. And then on the wheel, you've got cancer, diabetes, ADHD, high blood pressure, depression. Think about people in your life that you know that have one or more of these symptoms, mood swings, high cholesterol moving around the clock, up to 11 o'clock, caffeine and sugar cravings. How many of you have a cup of coffee with you right now at 8 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock on the West Coast? This is what our society is dealing with, cellular inflammation. And another great chart that kind of shows you, again, these are some symptomatic things that you could recognize. Maybe you're having digestive problems, which is over on the left side with the arrow. Maybe dizzy, especially when rising. Inability to handle stress, exertional malaise, like after you walk up a flight of stairs, you feel exhausted. Maybe you're having brain fog. Brain fog was huge in our family about 3 years ago, and my children were eating Swiss cake rolls, Krispy Kreme donuts every night. I was fixing them chocolate chip cookies with a glass of milk, sending an apple and a juice box every day in their lunch, and then they would have these carb-filled lunches at their schools. And I finally took the children to a nutritional visit, and my doctor was like, Carmen, your children are on sugar overload. So when that happened, I was totally taken aback, and it was interesting to be back in school studying nutrition at the time. And so what all of this actually came to formulate was an idea about the human cell. And so when I teach children, and I'm going to teach you this way, this human cell is the very basic building blocks of our life. We are made up of 70 trillion cells, and so it's always fun when I have a live crowd that I can ask questions to. Of course, everybody's on mute right now, but if I were to ask you to write down on your sheet of paper the kinds of cells that you can think of, and then I'm going to pull up my little fun kid slide. This is what I use in the classroom with the children, and I just ask them to look at this picture of Bob, who is my body man, and tell me a kind of cell that you can think of. And of course the kids go, brain cells, and then they see the pink lungs, they're like lung cells, heart cells. And then we point out some other organs and parts of the inside of the body that they may not necessarily, they know the stomach, and they might know the liver, the intestines, and of course they get goofy around the bottom parts, and we'll laugh about that and have fun with it. And so I would just ask you to take a moment and think about this. If everything in you that makes you work, that makes you function, every single part of you is a cell, skin cells, hair cells, eye cells, blood cells. If everything is a cell, do you think that your cells might be important in your health? I hope that that's a resounding yes. So we look back at the slide of the cell. And if you'll look at the little cell and you see like the little antenna, this looks like a Martian type thing. But what happens is, and as I explain this to the children, I'll usually take in a bouncy ball that has like little colorful dots floating inside, and that represents a cell. And then the receptors that you see sticking off of the cells, again, this is kind of like cell biology, college level cellular biology that you're learning right now, and we're dialing it down to something even a 6-year-old can understand. So imagine your cell as a bouncy ball, and imagine the receptors as little drinking straws or like the water tubes that kids play with. So then I'll get a big wad of Play-Doh, and I'll take that Play-Doh and I'll stick it on the end of the straw. And I show the children, I said, you know what? When you put a lot of sugar in your body, it's like sticking a wad of bubble gum on the end of your straw. And then do you think your cell can drink? And the children are like, no, Miss Johnson, I don't think my cells can drink. So grown-ups here, think about this. If you are downing a lot of sugar, and we're going to talk about what limits are, and I hope that this is very helpful, because I've never heard of a limit until about a year and a half ago, and I found out that the American Heart Association does put out guidelines for sugar consumption for adults, and I believe there's also the guidelines for children. But for the adults, the American Heart Association says you should have no more than 32 grams of sugar per day, of added sugar. So that means if you have one Frappuccino from Starbucks, you have already exceeded your quota of sugar for the day. And again, so we know that we shouldn't have sugar, but do you know why? Do you understand why now that you can't have sugars? It's because sugar is like taking a big wad of Play-Doh and sticking it on the end of your straw. And now your cell cannot take in the nutrients that it needs. And also, we know that too much sugar in the system causes your pancreas to shoot out insulin. And I think people kind of get foggy when we use all these words like we've heard of insulin, but we don't know what insulin is. And so I tell children that insulin is like the Pac-Man. And they all know Pac-Man. They all get excited. I know Pac-Man. So insulin is like a little Pac-Man in your body, and it goes out in search of sugar. And the more sugar you put in your system, if we look back at the human body, where did Bob go? I think Bob disappeared. Oh, there's Bob. So if you look at the human body and the pancreas, down there behind those two little kidneys, it's hiding from us, but the pancreas is in your body, and it is secreting insulin or little Pac-Men. And every time you put sugar in your body, those little Pac-Men, your pancreas has to produce more and more Pac-Men to go out there and scoop up the sugar. And what happens as a result is you can develop diabetes. Your pancreas poops out. It actually just, and I know that's not a very technical term, but that's what the medical community does call it. They call it pancreatic poop out, and the kids just think that's hilarious. But you understand what I'm saying. If you overwork your organs, if you overtax your body by putting in too many sugars, and we're going to get to fats and toxins in a minute, but you put in too many sugars into the body, you're blunting the receptors, and you're causing your pancreas to work overtime. So hopefully that's compelling reason to do that. Now, if you'll please write down on your piece of paper, write down 32 grams. And this is something that is shocking. What I'm going to do is show you, here is a picture. When I was giving a demonstration, I couldn't do this on the slide because I'm not really technologically advanced. I'm much more of a science person, but when I do my lectures, I'll draw a little tiny ring. So if you'll draw a circle on your paper and then draw a small another circle inside of there, it's like a skinny donut or like a hula hoop. So this is what your cells look like, each individual cell that you have in your body, and you have 70 trillion cells, right? So every one of your cells has a lipid bilayer, and I don't know who has heard, most of you probably have heard of lipids, but lipids are fats. So, okay, I want you to think very simply about this. If every cell in your body, everything you're made up is made up of cells, you have 70 trillion cells in your body, and every single one of those cells has a double fat ring on it. Do you think that it's kind of important what kind of fats you're going to put into your mouth? Yes, you need good fats from nature that have not been compromised by man's processing and overproducing. You need good God fats is what you really need in your diet. And I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but that's just the way that I like to teach it. If you want to say Mother Nature or whatever, a higher being, the spirit, whatever it is, okay, but just stuff that comes from the ground. So unaltered by man is what we want to put in our body. So there you have the fat. There you have the 2 layers of fat. And so there's a wonderful chart that shows, I hope that one's still in this slide deck. Let me see if I can, this chart. Okay, look at the obesity trends, the U.S. among adults. Okay, so the blue and white United States version, that, if you look down at the little legend at the bottom, roughly America, now this is 20 years ago in 1990, we were at the most between 10 and 14% overweight. Again, it's the Southeast, a bit of the Midwest. And then let's fast forward 10 years across the top to the right to 1999. 1 decade later, what's been going on from 1990 to 1999? We have had a plethora of low-fat things coming out on the market, low-fat diet books, low-fat this, low-fat dressings, low-fat crackers, right? And we all started to buy into that theory that, oh, yes, we have to avoid our fats because, fats make you fat. Well, that's not necessarily an accurate statement. Bad fats can make you fat, but not all fats are considered bad fats. So when we talk about types of fats that are good fats, it's going to be like the fats from an avocado, the fat off of lean meats and fishes, the fats that you find in eggs, the fat that you get from nuts like walnuts and pine nuts and peanuts. All those different nuts obviously have good fats in them. The bad fats that we talk about are like the things in the middle of the grocery store, the packaged processed foods. It's the French fries, the chicken wings, I love Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm from the South. I would eat that like every third day if I could. But that kind of fat that has been heated at high temperatures has been compromised. And then if we go back and you draw on your chart where your fat cell is, if you see here, if you can see the little X's that I drew inside of the ring, that's to represent fats. Well, then draw some X's on the outside of your ring next to those X's on the inside of the rings. And what happens is bad fats, they cling to good fats, if you can visualize that. So fats are lipophilic. Fat likes to cling to fat. So when you put in bad fat in your body, it's going to cling to your cell walls and compromise the rigidity of, it makes the cell wall rigid, which means that good stuff can't get in your cells and bad stuff can't get out. So now this next slide, if you draw on your cell some little receptors, look like little antennas on the cell. Now that's how some nutrition is getting into the body. And I just mentioned that, number one, if the cell wall is rigid, because see how the two layers of X's are one's on the outside of the cell wall and then the X's of the good fat are on the inner ring. So when the bad fats cling to the good fats, then you've got your cell is actually becoming like hardened, and it can't let good stuff in and it can't let bad stuff out. And you see I wrote ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. That is a byproduct. For instance, if you burn a fire in your fireplace, the byproduct of any kind of energy is smoke, right? And so ATP is a type of energy, and as a byproduct of that energy moving and creating inside our cells, there is waste that is created in our cells. And there's also waste that we put in our cells. So you think about this, if the cell wall is rigid now because we have bad fats clinging to the exterior of the cell, what's happening is those toxins inside your cells can't get out. And that's how your cells go bad. And so then if we go back again to the diagram of, I like this diagram, when you look over to the right, you see the little bucket that's sort of spilling over. I'm sorry. I'm totally dyslexic, and if I say left and right, I probably shouldn't say that because I'll get it wrong. So please forgive me. If you look over to the left where the toxic bucket is, you can see toxins, and there are a whole host of toxins. That will be a whole nother lecture, either from myself. I think Dr. Mercola is actually coming in to talk about toxins such as additives and preservatives and dyes and chemicals in our food. So those are types of toxins that you find in your packaged processed goods. But there's also kind of toxins that we develop when we have physical trauma. Say, for instance, you've been in a car wreck, and maybe you could draw a little bucket right now and start to list the things that are in your bucket. So the importance of this bucket theory is to let you know that as you fill up your bucket, again, at some point, there are multiple visuals. At some point, as that bucket fills up, you see at the bottom we start with maybe some infections. Maybe your child has had some ear infections at birth, and maybe they had a traumatic birth. Maybe the cord was wrapped around your child's neck. If we're thinking about your child and if your child is symptomatic in some category, let's look back at your child's history. If you're symptomatic, let's look at your history. Let's look at your bucket and see what's in your bucket. So in this bucket, you can have things such as infections that start to build in your bucket, and then you could have emotional trauma, such as the loss of a loved one, the separation, a divorce, a breakup with a boyfriend, your best friend gets mad at you, your boss is mad, you lose your job. All kinds of emotional trauma can start filling up your bucket, right? And then you have some kind of physical trauma, like you're in a car accident, or like for a child, when there's like a traumatic type of birth, like the child turned breech or something. All of these things cause our bodies to tense up, produce cortisol, and all of these things lead up into a bucket. And what happens eventually at some point is that you have a spillover, right? And so that, again, is why it's so critically important to understand what is going in your mouth is affecting and compromising your cells. And why are cells important? Because cells are basically what you're made of. And so if we can take things back to the root source, which are our cells, if we can clean up our cells, then as Dr. Katz said in the lecture earlier today, 80% of disease is preventable and or reversible. So if we have issues right now, if you have brain fog, if your child has ADHD, if your child has something as difficult to treat as autism, if your child is a little overweight, if your child has mood swings, a lot of these things can be remedied, again, if we go to the root source, which, again, what's the root source? I hope you all are nodding your head going, okay, I get it. She's saying that the cells are the root source of how we function, how we thrive, and how we survive. So I hope this is making sense, and I love to talk very quickly, and so I'm trying to slow down to allow you all to absorb what I'm sharing with you right now. And so we've talked about sugars, right? So to me, I said the whole goal of this summit is to provide parents with some simple strategies. And so the goal is not to overwhelm you with a lot of things. And so from my presentation today, I would like to share with you 3 keys to building healthy cells. And so we just talked about sugars and how sugars can blunt your receptors and how they can overtax your pancreas. When we talked about bad fats, how they cling to the outside of your cell walls, right? And then good stuff can't get in and bad stuff can't get out. So that makes me have to go back. I have to stop at fats right here and go back to the cell wall to show you all. The next slide in the cell drawing was, if we look at this cell with the energy in the middle, the ATP, and then there's a little smoke cloud above the ATP. The next slide would show something with the 3 letters, G as in girl, S as in Sam, T as in Tom. Yes, glutathione, spelled Gluthathione. So glutathione is your master antioxidant in your body. And this is very important for both men and women because glutathione is the resveratrol of all resveratrols. It's the acai berry that God put inside of you. It is what makes you able to convert bad estrogen, and both men and women have estrogen, so men still listen up. Everybody has estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. We have all of these hormones. We all have the hormones, just in different proportions. But we have all of these hormones. And so the next slide is something that's very important for you to understand. If you'll look at this chart, it looks like a big smiley face, but really on the left, you'll see a number 2 at the top. And that represents the number 2 estrogen. And this, again, is in men and women. That's a very critical point because this is how you can hopefully avoid cancer. And that is what's going on with me, although you can see in the photograph, I'm thin. I've always been thin. I've had perfect I'm 45 now, so I've had 25, that's very scary, 25 perfect pap smears. I've had 5 perfect mammograms. And yet I took a different test called the Genova 24-hour hormone panel, and that particular test showed that my methylation was completely messed up. And methylation is when that glutathione that I just talked about, that antioxidant in your body, its primary job is to go convert bad estrogen, which on the chart is number 4 and 16 on the right. I wrote bad above there. You have number 4 and 16 estrogen also. They are the bad estrogens, and number 2 is the good one. And so you want your body to constantly be converting the bad estrogen. You see that little arrow, convert the bad and turn it into good. And the way that your body does that is through glutathione. It's a methyl donor. And so what that means is it gives something to the estrogen hormone to turn it into a good number 2 type hormone. I know that's getting a little scientific, but the point still is, if you go back to the root thought about your cells, if your cells are covered up in junk from vending machines and junk, and I don't call it junk food because that's a misnomer. You're either going to be eating food or you're going to be eating junk. And the purpose of avoiding the junk, such as the stuff in the middle of the grocery aisles, the stuff that have partially hydrogenated oils, the things that have trans fats, the things that have dyes and chemicals and colors and additives and all that, that's all junk. and it messes up your cells. And if your cells can't function properly, you know what? Your most protective antioxidant in the whole world is not getting out of your cell. So again, see the cell and see ATP. If your cell wall is all rigid, it's very difficult for glutathione to get out and protect you. And it's meant to protect you. So these are hopefully compelling reasons to think about and consider not only what you eat, but please, now this whole telesummit is really about your children. So think about this in the context of your children. I thought I was being a wonderful mom by giving my children donuts and stopping by the Circle K and letting them have a pack of Skittles. Okay, one pack of Skittles has 44 grams of sugar. And if an adult can have an adult limit for sugar is 32 added grams of sugar a day. I would suspect that a child's might be between 12 and 16. So if 12 to 16 grams is the limit, the daily limit of sugar for a child, and again, added sugar. We're not going to talk about sugar that's in bananas or sugar that's in plain yogurt, the sugar that's in a plain glass of milk. Those are all naturally occurring sugars. We are talking about man-made added sugars in your diet and in your child's diet. So here is the slide that shows you where the resource comes from. This is not Carmen Johnson saying it. This is the 2010 Dietary Guidelines from the American Heart Association recommends no more than 8 teaspoons per day of added sugar based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Okay, let's equate that to something we are all familiar with. We all look on bottles and boxes for grams. So 32 grams of sugar is an adult limit. 16 grams, I would guess, would be what I would think might be comfortable for a child. So let's see what a child might be having. This next slide is staggering, and this is not all your child had that day. Say your child gets a juice box that you send with their lunch. There's about 13 grams of sugar in there. Maybe they have 2 packs of the packaged oatmeal for breakfast. There's probably another 13 grams of sugar, added sugar in there. A cookie, maybe they have a cookie at snack, or maybe it's somebody's birthday at school and they have a cupcake. Well, there's probably 8 to 16 grams of sugar in cookies and cupcake there. Then maybe you feel like, we go by a store on the way to soccer practice. And the kid's like, Mom, I'm starving, I'm hungry, just can I get a pack of chips and a soda to tide me over until we get home? Okay, a soda, one 12-ounce soda, I won't mention any names because they're all about the same, 25 grams of added sugar. And then you go home, maybe you have a little mac and cheese, and mac and cheese is going to have some sugar in it, right? Because all the carbs still turn to sugar if they don't get burned off. So if we just count up those simple items right there, your child just had more than 66 grams of sugar, and that was not all your child ate that day. And if we think back and reflect, no wonder our children are hyperactive. No wonder our children are getting diabetes at age 5, 6, 7. No wonder we have all these health issues with obesity. We are on sugar overload. So I think hopefully you'll love me for this. I'm certainly not a Nazi. And I'm not going to say, I'm not an extremist on any measure in the way that I counsel people as far as health coaching. My philosophy is that moderation is the key. So it's more about moderation and not deprivation, because if you feel deprived, you're going to want the very things that you're not supposed to have. So please listen to me and say, I am not saying, please hear this, I am not saying that you should not have sugar. I'm just saying there's a limit. Just like there are lines on the road for us to keep us in the lanes and not run us off the road, there are boundaries in just about everything in life, and nobody really talks about the boundaries of sugar. And I think it's so helpful when I teach these children that their limit should be under 16 grams of added sugar a day. When I go into a first grade room, these are 6- and 7-year-olds, and immediately after I leave, they are tearing open their lunch boxes wanting to see what did Mommy and Daddy send me for lunch, and their teachers are having these tremendous conversations with the kids. And I have mom after mom emailing me going, Carmen, Noelle came home today and she just ripped open the pantry and then went to the refrigerator and pulled out the little yogurt that had the M&Ms on top, and she shoved it in my face and said, Mommy, I can't have this. It has too much sugar. And this child who is 6 is able to look on the label and realize that one M&M yogurt, which Mommy thought she was doing good, well, I'm going to justify it because there's yogurt in here, or I'll justify the strawberry milk because at least they're getting milk, or I'll justify the cookies because I'm giving them a glass of milk with it. that's not the point. The point is that if we can follow some simple guidelines to regulate us and pull us back in perspective a little bit, we can have a much healthier generation of children just simply by reducing the amount of sugars that they eat. So hopefully, let me see if I can see a raise of hands out there. Is anybody really getting, wow, okay, I see you, if you press *2, you can raise your hand. I'd love to see who all is out there that actually is understanding. Okay, show of hands, yes. Does that number make sense to you? I think that hopefully will have some impact. So, okay, we've looked at the facts, and now the last issue, because I don't want to overwhelm you, I was saying there are 3 ways to really improve your overall health and your children's overall health. And Dr. Mercola is going to talk more about this next Tuesday when he joins us. He's going to talk about additives in our food. But there are over 1,500 new chemicals introduced every year, and only 10 of those 1,500 are ever tested for toxicity, all being introduced into our world. Over in Great Britain, there are much more stringent rules on packages and foods, like the Nutri-Grain bars that are made in the U.S. are allowed to use the red dyes and chemicals. The Nutri-Grain bar, same packaging, same labeling, over in Great Britain is colored with beetroot red and annatto. They use natural plant colorings to color their products, whereas in the United States, we're using dyes and chemicals. No wonder we are one of the sickest countries in the world. We are dumping chemicals into our body all day, every day. Think about the Gatorade that your child has on the soccer field. Gatorade has probably 25 grams of sugar, and then additionally it's got the dyes and food colorings in there. So you're dumping 2 kinds of toxins into your child, and I know that puts parents in an uproar, and please, there are other alternatives such as a banana and a water. The banana has enough electrolytes, and the water will balance the child out. But again, we're dumping dyes and chemicals, and it's okay to have these things sometimes, but the problem is a day in, day out bombardment on your system. That's what is doing the damage. Our systems were not built to have all these damaging toxins. Our liver has to work double and triple overtime to clear out these toxins, and when the liver can't keep up, guess what happens? Your cells get toxic. Your cells don't flush out properly. They build up with bad toxins inside, and then what happens? You spill over into any number of diseases. And there we show again, why should I worry about toxins? Because they build up over time, and you will spill over into disease, and I know you don't want your children to spill over into disease. So, again, that's just sort of the short run. There's a whole list of toxins, and I know as each of you are taking your journey, some of you are in a much further advanced level of clean eating, and so this chart may not seem so overwhelming, but to those of you who are just starting on your journey, I would just encourage you to think about limiting your sugars and limiting your children's sugars, and go teach your children today, which I have a surprise for you at the end of this call. Share with your children what you learned. But what I'm actually going to do at the end of the summit is I'm going to record a lesson being taught in a classroom to children that will be posted up, and you will be able to share that video with your child. You're welcome to share that video with anyone, with your child's class, anyone whom you think would benefit from it. But it will be this same lecture on a first grade level. And you can incorporate 3rd and 5th grade, and even middle school kids can listen to this and get it. But again, it's going to be a simplified lesson that your children can learn. And the beauty of this is that as your children learn, they will hold you accountable. And you might not like that because I don't like it. My children made me write on my refrigerator, I promise to not drink high fructose corn syrup. I promise to give up diet sun drops. And I was living off of diet sun drops there for quite a while, and you can't talk the talk and not walk the walk. So when you tell your children these things are bad for you, your children love themselves enough to protect themselves, and we as parents, a lot of us don't love ourselves enough to do what's right for us. But I can bet my life that every one of you parents on this line, you would do anything to save your child. And the first thing you're going to have to do is step up and understand how sugars and dyes and chemicals are affecting your child at the cellular level, and make a commitment as a family, as Dr. Kat said, make a commitment to try to hold each other accountable to eat better and find ways to put better items, surround yourself with better items, and let it be a gradual process. So back to the toxins to end this. This is a list of toxins that are bombarding our body every day. There are foods. There's toxins in our foods, pesticides, the herbicides, the fungicides, in our farming process, all the fruits and vegetables that get sprayed for insects so that they grow better. We want to keep the bugs off of all of the different, the broccoli and whatever else out there that they're spraying apples. Apples are insanely sprayed. Strawberries get sprayed. So you've got to watch out for those. Hopefully you're washing your vegetables. There are toxins in household cleaners, in vaccines and medications. There's toxins in our water. I mean, there are toxins everywhere. So please don't freak out. You can't live in a toxic-free environment, but what you can do is minimize your exposure. So that's a goal that you should have somewhere down the road, depending upon where you are in this journey. But hopefully this has been helpful today, and I really appreciate you all getting on the line tonight. For those of you that are going to listen in at some later point, thanks for still listening in. Tomorrow we will have Pam Killeen and Frida Moonkoch. That is such a hard name to say. Frida Moonkoch. These ladies are known as like the Howard Sterns of nutrition. And Pam's going to talk about, again, fats and good sources of fats. And Frida's going to dial in on the addictive properties of sugar to give us much more insight. And my hope and goal is that now that you all understand the structure of your cells and the effects that sugars and the bad fats clinging to the outside and the toxins filling up on the inside, now that you understand that, when the other experts come on to talk to you about their particular subject matter, you're going to have lots of aha moments going, oh, now I see what they're saying, as long as you can relate it back to the simple science of the cells. So again, I thank you all for being on the call today. We're going to go ahead and end it because I know you have family things to get back to. I don't want you on overload. The goal is to really simplify your life, and stay tuned for the next wonderful experts that we're going to have throughout this whole 10-day journey. You walk away hopefully with 10 or so nuggets that you can use right away in your family to make your life easier and to make your children's life healthier. So I bid you farewell, and great job being wonderful moms and dads, and look forward to sharing Pam Killeen with you tomorrow on the Healthy Kids Revolution. Have a great night.